Your host, Sully.
And now, here's Cameron.
There's Sully. Thank you. Oh, who's that voice in the other room? Oh, it's the DJ himself, Mike. And then the pop culture fanatic, Bruno. I read your book, you son of a bitch.
3,000 watt radio station in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Sound like Ted Baxter. It all started
began for me at a 10,000 watt station in Fresno, California.
Right where you want me. So, one of the favorites of the Tonight Show hosted it for 29 years, 7 months, 3 weeks, and a day. It's none other than Johnny Carson that we'll be covering tonight. Yeah. Replacing a spot previously held by Ernie Kovacs and Steve Allen, among others. The man...
even Jerry Lewis did it for a bit.
Jerry Lewis, yeah. The man has done it all. He's been a ventriloquist. He's been a magician. During World War II, he served also as an amateur boxer.
Yeah.
He has original consideration for the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Yep.
He also passed on roles that, including G.I. Blues and Harvey Korman's villain role in Blazing Saddles. But it was all for the better. He had the Tonight Show working for him and became beloved by America due to his progressive stance, clever wit, and outrageous interviews.
The thing that gets me is you got to think Carson too. He was taking the Tonight Show over from. Well, you got to think it goes Steve Allen,
yep.
Steve Allen, Ernie Kovacs, Jack Parr was there.
Yeah,
and Jack Parr was the one that gave the network the most problems. Granted, great host. I mean, if you ever see his stuff, he's a great host.
Yeah,
but his problems with the network kind of forced him out, and they took a chance on this kid who had done a game show called
"Who Do You Trust?"
Who Do You Trust?
There you go. Look at you go.
And he gets introduced by Groucho Marx because they were having a whole bunch of guest hosts that season, and they were like, wait, who the hell is Johnny Carson? Let's see how good this goes, and they took a chance on him, and he had this thing about him where he would just sit and listen to people.
Yeah, he was a great listener, and he knew what to ask.
Yeah, he didn't make it about him. I mean, Parr, you watch it sometimes. Right. He made it about him sometimes, but Carson was like, he would sit behind that desk, and I remember I've watched a lot of the stuff pre-1968 has been wiped. Unfortunately, because NBC was doing a whole
crackdown. Yeah,
not a crackdown. They were just
VHS tapes were just disposable back
then. Yeah.
So a lot of that stuff got wiped. But if you think about it, his way of interviewing was something that was a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more. It wasn't like Steve Allen, where Steve Allen would introduce somebody and then they'd come on and then he'd have the guys he worked with, Pat Harrington and Don Knotts and Tom Poston and all those guys would come in, and then it wasn't like Parr, where Parr would come out and be a smug, be very smug, and he would
over the top. Yeah.
Oh, not over the top, but he kind of would he kind of.
I mean, the water closet joke was kind of pushing it.
The water closet joke kind of
restroom humor for those who don't know, but 60s that was sensitive.
He was pushing it with the network too, and I think Carson was the safety valve for NBC at that time, and he was bringing in people he would bring in Lenny Bruce, he'd bring in George Carlin, he'd have people on. He'd have, people on that were just, very off. This is the early years, mind you.
It's always great hearing those comedians talk about how their blood was flowing to their head. They're like, how am I going to impress Johnny? it's making my career. But if I don't get a laugh from him, oh man, I'm dead.
It's not only that; it's like it was the comedians, it was the actors, the actresses, especially the actresses. Sometimes he would have on, and sometimes you got to remember the guy was married 4 times, but he would leer. He would leer, and I wouldn't blame him. It's the one with Doris Day where she's not wearing a bra.
Yes.
Holy crow!
Oh.
Groucho Marx said it best. I knew Doris Day before she was a virgin, and the thing that I mean is he was always bringing in people that were, he I'm trying to put, like, I missed that whole first maybe 10-15 years of Carson when he was just knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
And then go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I started I was born in 59, so 70, 71. And I remember having a road trip vacation with the parents, and we got in an argument and something, and I think I just resolved it. Let's just watch Carson. It was a soothing effect,
Yeah.
Everybody knew it was cool to watch Johnny Carson,
In the 90s, he was always in my life. There was always promos for like best of VHS compilations and reruns.
Yeah.
You still see reruns on Get TV, and
we still have some video evidence of what happened, like the famous Ed Ames tomahawk throw.
Yeah. They played that a lot. Yeah. The repeat it.
Which is great because he was in a show called, what was the show Ed Ames did? Geronimo or something like that?
Oh, it was it was a Disney.
Yeah.
He played Mingo, I believe.
Was it Hawkeye? No.
Daniel, with Fess Parker. Yep.
With Fess Parker. So he could actually.
Or was it David? No, it was Daniel Boone. It was Daniel. Fess Parker also did David Crockett, but it was Daniel Boone with Ed Ames. Yeah.
So what happens is they have a car, like a wood cutout, right? And Ed Ames is gonna. Johnny throws the tomahawk, and it's good. Ed Ames throws it, and it lands. They have like a figure painted on the thing, and it hits it right in the crotch.
And sticking straight up.
Yeah, it gets a long laugh, and then Johnny Carson turns to Ed Ames and goes, "Hey, I didn't know you were Jewish."
Oh,
which is true because Ed Ames was Jewish.
It's one of the longest sustained laughs in TV history.
Yeah.
That and the Dick Van Dyke Show when they were convinced their baby got swapped, and the couple came over who thought had their baby, and they were a black couple.
Yeah.
which for 1963 was wow, or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But but and everybody, you could just see everybody on the stage even enjoying that joke,
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think the thing was that Carson knew how to just jump on something when things were either going awry or they were going. They were going good. Like
his timing was impeccable.
He had the best timing as a comedian, as a host, and as a comedian, because he knew how to keep the foot in both worlds.
Yep,
absolutely.
It wasn't like
Howie Mandel was on
Yeah.
Inside of You podcast and talked about how he's like, I still think I'm the most hated guy by Carson.
Oh, really?
Because he did some really experimental stuff, and Johnny was like, I don't know what the hell you're doing, but get out of here.
He wasn't. I think he warmed up to it later, but he wasn't a big SNL fan.
I think so, because they ripped on him in one skit or something. And it was like, come on, dude, you're going to be mocked in one way or another. You're a famous person.
James probably knows what he said about Chevy Chase, the famous quote. He said, couldn't elicit a fart at a bean party or something similar to that.
Yeah. And they were grooming Chevy Chase to be the next host for The Tonight Show.
I like how that turned out.
But then
you
can thank Johnny Carson for Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Because in the 70s, they had done, I think they were doing the midnight special.
So.
And on Saturday nights, they'd run like a best of, of Carson.
Yeah, Ed McMahon would announce it. Stay tuned for an outstanding entertainment program, the best of Carson. I remember the intro. Yeah.
So then what would happen is that Carson was like, "Look, I can't do. I can give you 5 nights a week, and that's it. 6, you're pushing it." So then NBC was like, "Okay, well, let's see. We can figure out to do something. There's this guy, Lorne Michaels, and and they basically began the germination for Saturday Night Live, and that happened. But I always am amazed about in the '60s what the other networks threw out to try to beat.
It's like you don't know if they just didn't want to be like Carson or if they just weren't open to suggestions, but it is very maddening. You're like, you passed on this guy?
You've got Merv Griffin, who was not well liked by Carson. I don't think he liked Carson that much. And I think they had an uneasy relationship or something like that.
I think a lot of jealousy seeps into it, especially because Merv also had a way with words and, Carson. I mean, if you're in the same kind of business, one thing I noticed with all these industry professionals, even if they've never met the guy or even if they respect him, they hate it when you compare them. Oh, how dare you compare me? I'm like, well, you're on the same avenue.
he was being framed to be like Carson's, the guy who's going to take Carson and he wiped.
Probably insecurity, I guess.
Joey Bishop had to go for 2 years. That got wiped.
Oh, yeah. Damn.
Well, and Merv Griffin and also Mike Douglas I watched them after school. They were 4:00 in the afternoon shows, which is you don't see now.
Yeah, where are they now?
Talk shows, but I'd watch Merv Griffin and Mike Douglas all the time. It was that or Gilligan's Island or Bugs Bunny.
Mike Douglas was so awesome.
Mike, but they would put. I think and I said before, the nearest somebody got to Carson was Dick Cavett.
Right.
He had that show for a while.
Yes, he did.
Then it was just, and then all this. Go ahead.
He'd get like Jimi Hendrix, and he'd get hipper acts. George Harrison, I think.
So. Yeah.
He had John Lennon on. He had the Jefferson Airplane and Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Joni Mitchell like the day after Woodstock.
Oh man.
He had
Janis Joplin.
Janis Joplin.
Janis.
They had some kind of camaraderie too. Him and
But
in the same circles. Yeah.
He'd also have people on that were amazing film. Like he would have. I think he had Orson Welles on. I don't think anybody really had Orson Welles on.
Right.
But Johnny would have
he apparently went back to a live magician trick he did where he had Orson cutting him in half, and I think that friendship remained. We talk about a weird relationship.
One night Dick Cavett had on, and I remember seeing a video of this. It's Mel Brooks, Peter Bogdanovich, Frank Capra. I forgot who else is in. Oh, Robert Altman.
Oh, damn.
And that was great because he'd have Mel Brooks on. Nobody had Mel Brooks on before, except for the 2,000-year-old man.
I do believe that Mel Brooks is on Carson's first show.
I think he was.
Yeah,
he was.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and go ahead.
No, but he would have people like the thing is Carson would have people on that were very sort of like out of the norm too. Like I remember one night he had on Robert Easton. If you know who Robert Easton is, he's an actor you might recognize from Invasion of the Giant Spider, that MST3K. He plays the
that guy.
He plays the dude. Okay, his thing was he was a dialect coach in Hollywood, and he came on the show. He says he says I taught certain people how to say certain dialects and stuff like that. It was an amazing interview to watch,
That's
and then
lovely.
he'd have the good old standbys like Don Rickles, Jonathan Winters,
All the greats.
All
If
the
you were to find a documentary that sums up Carson, there's been some good PBS ones that still replay. The Story of Late Night is by CNN, is on HBO Max still. But what are some other good documentaries with a retrospect on the late night show format that you would recommend for those introducing them to Carson?
I think there was an American Masters they did for him.
That's the one I'm thinking of. Kevin Spacey narrated it. Ooh.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a good special. It really gave you a good sense of how the guy, for all his alcoholism and divorces, just wanted to entertain.
Yeah.
And he took it hard, even though he knew it was on his way out. Like, it was never enough. What am I going to do the rest of my days on Earth?
Well, the day he announced he was retiring, I remember that was like front page news.
Yeah, that's all anyone wanted to talk about. Is like the voice of, I wouldn't call him the voice of America, but he was the voice of TV.
he was the gold standard that everybody tried to shoot for. And but I think a lot of people don't realize some of the things he did were like the whole Joan Rivers thing.
Yeah.
That story unto itself.
Yeah, how she filled in for him and got her own variety show afterwards.
Well, what happened was, supposedly, from what I've gathered from reading, and she never got his blessing, so to speak.
Yeah, they had a falling out. I think he felt like she did it behind his back, or
again, it's insecurity.
Yeah, I know.
And some of his Edgar Rosenbaum's fault, for him pushing her to do it,
what can you do?
And that whole thing was like, he basically was like, I think he was kind of like gloating a little bit, when she got canceled, saying, hey, you know what? You made your bed, you got to lie in it, because I think a lot of the guys who wanted to have talk shows, like David Brenner, had a talk. David Brenner was not. If anybody, I don't think David Brenner was like Seinfeld, except he's not as funny.
Noticed that? Yeah.
He was. My name is David Brenner, and I'm from New York. Yeah.
I'm on the freeway. Suddenly my car decides to become a rock, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I remember him doing that on the Tonight Show. Oh, he would guest host too, wouldn't he? Yeah.
Well, the guys he had host were like, he would have Joey Bishop on, John Davidson was on, David Brenner did it. I know Sinatra did it one night.
Letterman did it.
Letterman.
Yeah.
Letterman did it.
Long time ago.
Letterman did it. I think, I might be wrong here. I know Rickles did it, and there's the famous Rickles breaking the cigarette box.
Oh yeah, I was hoping to bring that up. Yeah, I saw that when it happened.
Yeah.
Did you know that? What happened with that, Cameron?
Please. I'm not read up on that particular one. Love to hear more.
Mike, you do the first half. I'll do the second half. All right.
Okay. So Rickles is hosting with Ed McMahon, guest hosting, and Carson had a cigarette box on his desk. I guess that's what they called it then. You put cigarettes in, whatever. Everybody smoked back then.
Right.
And Rickles says, well, what's that, Dad? And he breaks it. So,
of course he would.
So the next night, and James can pick up here.
So the next night, Carson is hosting, and he goes to open a cigarette box. He said, what happened? Who broke this? He says, and they said, when was this broke? And I think it was a couple nights. It wasn't the next night. It was, I think, the next week or something like that.
Oh,
yeah.
And I think Rickles did the whole week. So Rickles has a show taping next door.
CPO Sharkey. Yeah.
Right?
Is he interrupted or?
Oh, he goes over. He goes over. Carson goes, well, where's he filming? He says he's next door. He's filming CPO Sharkey. He said, I want to get this thing fixed. He broke my cigarette box.
That's a good Rickles. I'm telling you, yeah.
So then he gets the camera guy. Now Fred DeCordova, who's the stage manager, is going, yeah, go ahead. So he gets the camera. He walks over to the studio. He sees the page. He's like, you know who I am. He's like, yeah, go ahead, go in.
And it's a live taping.
You don't say no to Johnny.
Yeah.
And he breaks the scene. He's like, "What the hell is this?" And he's like, they're doing all this shtick and stuff. And then Harrison Page, who was like in CPR Shark, he goes, Carson turns like, "Hey, look, a black guy." And
yeah, I was gonna say, I'm glad you brought it up. I was afraid to say that one.
Oh my
God! He's a black man, yeah. Which is, Don Rickles all the way, He do that kind of things all the time.
He's one of the few.
I wonder if it was staged or not. I
think it was.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter.
Yeah,
it was played so well.
I mean, maybe an assistant gave him a note saying, "By the way, you're going to have a visitor."
No, I don't think.
I think they just barged in on the set in front of a studio audience. Yeah.
Wow.
They barged in, and
that's ballsy. That would not fly today.
Oh no, it would.
People would be like, "We're behind schedule. We can't do this right now. We got to cut to commercial."
Back then, it was who gave a shit. Let's have some fun, But the thing I've always loved too is like the night Jimmy Stewart was on.
Oh, lovely.
And Jimmy Stewart was talking about his dog Bo.
Harvey.
My dog Bo was a sweet dog, as sweet as could be. And he's talking about this dog. And Carson's like, Jimmy Stewart's like breaking up, and Carson's like crying. It's like, holy shit. And then one night he's on the show. He's like, "I want to read you some poetry." He's like, "Yeah." Lake Temaconca is as smooth as glass, but the ride getting up there is a pain in the ass. He would have people on that you never thought would be funny. There's a great part, and Mike, you've probably saw this. It was George Gobel.
Yeah, he was always good.
He was always good. He's sitting there one night, and they're a little in the cups, and all of a sudden, Dean Martin comes on. Bob Hope comes on, and I think for some strange reason somebody else came. I don't know who it was. So Gobel's talking of he's like, I was stationed in Oklahoma, Norman, Oklahoma. He says, in World War II. He's like, yeah. He says, not one Japanese plane got past Tulsa. And Gobel turns
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Dean Martin is taking his cigarette and flicking it into Gobel's cup without Gobel's. And Gobel's is going. They're all laughing. You ever get the feeling the world's a black tuxedo and you're a pair of brown shoes? And Dean Martin keeps flicking the ash and stuff like that. And it was just, oh my God, I never laughed so hard in my life. That's what I miss about these talk shows now. There's not that, it feels forced now. There's not that.
It's boom, promote your show and we'll joke around. And
I mean, that's kind of why I only liked Conan. The rest were just, like you say, too overscripted, but Conan was kind of the anti-interview where he's like, "You really don't want to promote your movie here tonight, do you?" Just something that just would kind of ridicule the guest. And, to Jimmy Kimmel's own credit, he does try to also kind of be a smart ass, but then I look at Fallon and he's just laughing at his own jokes, and I'm like, yeah, see, I don't want to be here. It's not fun. There's nothing worse than feeling left out of a giant conversation.
I forget who the guest was, but I remember one of Conan's last shows. I think he told the guest, I'm not even sure this is a show.
Right. It's meta.
He's been doing it for 20 years.
Oh, and when NBC screwed him over, I loved how he just randomly just asked them, "Hey, we need a car sponsor to just pop up here, just so we can burn NBC's money." Yeah. It doesn't have anything to do with the skit, but we just need an expensive car.
What do you guys think about the whole, when Carson was going to retire, do you think Letterman or Leno should have gotten it?
I would prefer to. I love Leno as a guest on Letterman's show, but as a host,
I'm the same way.
It never felt like it was like the suit didn't fit or something. He just didn't have
literally.
it,
Yeah, it seemed like he was okay with decent.
He was hilarious as a guest. I loved him as a guest.
Yeah, no, he had stand up down, and then it just seemed like he just kind of went back on all his own.
To me, it was,
and even his movie appearances, playing himself, it's like,
yeah, what was he doing here?
The movie would come to a dead halt. I forget the film he was in. He was in a few playing Leno, but
yeah, I'm with you.
And it's too bad because again, he was funny as a comedian.
Totally. Yeah, Letterman would have been a great replacement. I guess he just, as he stated on the record, it just was so much pressure at that time, take a chance on him.
Well, Carson wanted him. And Carson knew that if, he was going to give, I think Carson wanted him and said, I want you to give it to Dave Letterman because, he's a Midwestern boy, like me. He sees it, reverent. He can do this, and this, and this. And of course, the board at NBC. Now, I don't believe all the stuff about Leno hiding in the cabinet, listening to the.
Yeah,
I don't believe that. That's
a lot of rumors where you're just like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, he was like,
some instances have been improved. This is not a work of fiction, but some parts of it are fiction. Yeah, one of those disclaimer things.
Yeah, I think the thing what NBC kind of looked at Leno and said, "Look, we can either have Letterman, and he brings in the college crowd." Or we have Leno and we play it safe. Yeah. And I think that broke Johnny's heart because if you look at it, Johnny never appeared on the Tonight Show with Leno.
Never.
When Letterman went to CBS, Johnny made 2 appearances and he was always giving Letterman jokes via a fact.
He wanted to be part of the creative process. He didn't want to just be, hey, here I am, the has-been, here to talk to you.
He knew, and I think the thing is with him is that they were the last year he was on, they weren't hyping it a lot.
No, they weren't.
They were just kind of like, hey, it's Johnny's last year. And the last couple shows that he did, I remember seeing the last show, and Mike, you remember this. He was sitting on that stool in his blazer. I think he took the tie off. I don't remember. Because he just said, I want to thank you for everything. And, it's been a fun time. And, he said goodbye and that was it. And I think
there was a quaver in his voice. He was
there was a little bit of a quaver.
This close to crying.
Yeah. And I think Ed was done. And I think Ed was kind of like, I'm going to, I'm already, I'm with you on this. The thing I always loved is Doc Severinsen being there because Doc, when Ed was out doing something, Doc would come in as the co-host or as the armchair guy. And I loved the one night they were talking about stuffing for a turkey. And how I don't like the first Mrs. Severinsen liked oyster stuffing. I didn't like oyster stuffing. And she says, what happens every Thanksgiving? I write a check out to her and I have lasagna, And they would have, if you remember, they would have, if Severinsen was out, they'd have Tommy Newsom come in. And Tommy Newsom was always
Mr. Square. Yeah.
Mr. Square, but just so good with some of the things like Carson was like, Tommy, what are you doing this week?
Player, for those who don't know.
And Tommy Newsom would go like, I'm going to go home and paint my walls.
You're right.
We'll return after these messages.
If you like small town mystery, crazy news, and wild history, then the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast is for you. Each week, Josh Mills and Wayne McCarty bring you the absolute best Florida has to offer. So if you're looking for a show that's safe for the family, but funny enough to help you escape everyday life, then listen to the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast. That's Florida Men, plural, on Florida Man podcast.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win. On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast recs and booty debates, Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Breakfast time. Listen at breakfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
The Jacked Up Review Show podcast is honored to be part of the Blind Knowledge Podcast Network. Join anytime, talk the talk, and enjoy yourselves. There's something enlightening for everyone with this crowd of cool cats. Check them out. Just out of the bloom, you're like,
out of the blue.
What?
And you see other talk show guests since then play off other people. You know, Letterman was always had all these characters around, you know, the studio, and I think Johnny kind of started that interacting with the band leader and
Good.
and Ed. But
Well, he had
there's another thing.
The talent.
Carson was. I would talk about his timing. He would contribute to a bit that the whoever was doing something funny, but he wouldn't step on it.
no.
But he'd have the perfect. His timing was. There was a great example. I was talking about when I DJ'd the last night he was on the air, and I played his entire 2-record set of Johnny Carson highlights the same night as his last show. There's a bit with the Smothers Brothers, and
Yes.
they're doing panel, and all of a sudden Tommy started talking to an actress. I can't remember who the actress was. It might have been Julia Prowse, but I may be way off. But he just stops and says, "I've always liked you," and he's talking to her and says, "You move around like a princess," and you hear her go, "Thank you." And then there's a slight pause in time. He goes, "Do you mess around?" And the audience goes nuts. And then Johnny, after a beat or two, says, "It's always the quiet ones." You know, he didn't ruin the joke, but he almost like he got it out of it. And now let's get on with the show. You know, it was funny. You know, and the Smothers Brothers are another great.
Well,
Isn't that bullshit how, you know, they pretty much did what Johnny always wanted to do, you know, like speak out against the war and other wrongs in society. But, you know, unfortunately, Johnny had to cater to, okay, I can't get political, and they got political,
Right.
and they were denied their award.
Speaking of that, though,
it's like ridiculous.
one of my favorite Carson stories, or the guest he had, Jim Garrison. If you've seen JFK, Kevin Costner
Yes.
plays Jim.
Yeah.
He had him on, and Johnny just totally went after his credibility. Are you kidding with this stuff? He didn't say it like that, but he just totally ripped on him. If you watch the interview, you really think that's true? You know?
Yeah.
He basically said, you know, where did you get this from? You know,
Right.
I think
as we found out, you know, I mean, they acquitted the guy in 40 minutes. You know, so Garrison didn't really do anything.
Right. There wasn't anything.
That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
But Johnny could get was smart. He was smart, as you know.
He knew how to play his cards instead of risk getting fired by a producer or angering his guests and having them storm off. But,
yeah.
I never remember reading about somebody storming off, but I do remember like something happening one time. There's two things that come to my mind. Number one is he had Oliver Reed on.
Was he drunk as a skunk as usual?
Oh no.
Really?
He had Shelley Winters on too.
Oh, man.
So you've got Oliver Reed and Shelley Winters. Shelley Winters, nobody to fuck with. I mean, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
And Oliver Reed, whole thing about, you know, I'd like, you know, I think a man and a woman are equal, but I think a woman should be, you know, doing this and doing this and doing this. And when I come home, and Shelley Winters took her drink and just threw it at him.
Wow.
And then there's the infamous Peter O'Toole story.
Oh yes. Oh my God.
A lot of and Mike, you may have heard this one.
It's actually collected in one of those awesome books that talks about all those awesome English actors. And yeah, O'Toole and Reed were always playing pranks on each other and their co-stars.
Well, what happened was that I think Peter O'Toole was doing The Ruling Class, or one of those movies, and
one of the he went mid-70s comedies. Yeah,
Japan. He was in Japan, and he flew to Hawaii, and that had coincided with a cocktail hour. and then it went to Los Angeles, and that coincided with a cocktail hour. And then it went to Chicago, cocktail hour. Finally got to New York, or I think he went to New York or Los Angeles. He was in New York, excuse me. He was in New York, or he was in LA. And Carson went up to him and said, "How are you, Mr. O'Toole?" He's like, he's like, "What?" He's like, "I'm doing fine. How are you?" You know. And O'Toole came out and was bombed and tired at the same time.
Oh, damn.
And then he left the show, and Carson had to say, "I'm sorry, Mr. O'Toole was very tired and very, very jet lagged and all that." He came back a couple years later to promote the stuntman and told him 50% is true and the other 50% is true. Yeah, he was drunk and he was tired. So, you know. But
I don't sound like the character he plays in My Favorite Year.
I was just about to say,
which is
do something
Johnny
similar.
Carson's on record of loving that movie. It's
it's
kind of based on the Sid Caesar show.
Yeah, and it's supposedly based. The character's based on like either Errol Flynn and a little bit of John Barrymore.
Coincidentally, it ends kind of the same way. You kind of like Carson, where he's just looking at himself on tape and he's just like, wow, I've come so far. I'm going to miss this.
Yeah.
Well, what gets me is watching those last episodes and watching the night that what's her face, Bette Midler sang "One for My Baby" and "One for the Road."
Oh yeah.
And he was crying. I mean, because he loved her. He loved Bette. He had her on
the camera work was great. They had him in the background watching her, which you'd never seen before.
Yeah. And the thing that got me was the night Robin Williams came on, one of those last nights, and just killed it, Yeah. And I just remember like a lot of people who were with Carson till the end basically said, "Nah, we're not going on Jay's show. Fuck it. I don't want to go on Jay's show."
Yeah.
No. But if anybody, go ahead.
I think Bette and Robin were his two favorite guests at the time. I think that's why they closed with those two. They were the same night, and then the final night was just Johnny reminiscing.
Yeah,
and I think they showed a clip or two, and they did it behind the scenes. Yeah.
Do you remember the night his son Ricky died?
Who died?
His son Ricky. They had a falling out.
That's rough.
I think he was either Joan, his first or second wife's son, because he's got a couple other kids. I know that.
Yeah, and I've read the biography of him.
How many of them are still alive?
A couple of them are. But Ricky was the one who gave him, a lot of grief. Mm-hmm. And one night Ricky was driving, and I think he basically his car went off the road and he was killed. And Carson said something. He says, "Most of over the past week I lost my son Ricky, and I want to just show you some of the photographs that he took because he was a good photographer." And it went to black after that, and it had Richard Carson, and it was kind of like sad, and then they came back, and everybody was, because I don't think Johnny really showed, let him know what was going on. People would joke around about what he was going on in his private life. Like one night I remember, Kinnison was on, and he was getting divorced. And he said something to the effect of, I had Marvin Mitchelson, a man whose work you must know pretty well. And Johnny started laughing, because Marvin Mitchelson was like the best divorce attorney in look out. And then there's the time he got pulled over for drunk driving, and Robin Williams says, he's doing a bit, and Robin Williams says, "Well, you know what I'm talking about, right?" And he just went, "Oh, sorry," like that. And he goes, "I won't be getting calls from Mr. Corvo anymore now, will I?" I think it's sometimes they were doing a roast for Johnny Carson one time. He says,
"Oh man,"
Newhart said his first wife's name was Joan, His second wife's name was Joanne. His third wife's name was Joanna. The rate just keep going. The man could save money on bath towels.
Yeah.
So,
man. Is there any other good home media collections that your guys recommend purchasing for those wanting to just get some of these great?
And I was looking for that 2-record vinyl, and I don't think I have it anymore. I probably sold it at some point.
I have it.
Yeah, it's a great collection. It's a great collection.
Yeah, he's got like Jay Silverheels on there, and
the bit with Don Rickles and Glenn Campbell on there is hilarious.
I never heard that one.
Well, Don's talking to Glenn about, my mother died, my father. You got it, and then you go back and say, let's get broads. It just that was Rickles. He was and I think there's a Joey Bishop or somebody. I love you to death. I think he's talking to Jerry Lewis, but if you don't put that cigarette on, I'm going to kill you. All this off the cuff, and it was real at the time. People would.
The thing was that I remember. If you remember, Joey Bishop had on his talk show had Regis Philbin as the co-host.
Yeah,
and he would always like rail Regis, pretend to rip on Regis.
Who wouldn't want him?
Regis Philbin walked off the set. And I think he stayed away for 2 nights. But what you find out later is that they did it in order to get ratings.
Oh yeah, I think I did hear. I think I heard some about that on Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal podcast.
As Ed McMahon were close. They were close.
Yeah.
And my mother actually one night was in New York City during the 1960s. And she'd gone out with a couple of friends, and they were in this piano bar in Midtown Manhattan, and they were all singing along at the piano. And she looks down, and there's Ed McMahon when Ed was tippling, back then.
Yeah.
And my mom said, "Oh my God, I was like on the same piano bar as Ed McMahon. I couldn't believe it, And this is a woman who, used to hang out with Carol Shelby. And yeah. I said, Mom, if you played your cards right, I would have been a millionaire. But I think the one thing that gets me is like Carson was always. Sometimes Carson would have somebody on that, like the night he had Michael Landon on.
Sweet.
Right before he died.
Oh, when he was, and he was talking about how he didn't like people talking about his ill health or something like that.
Yeah, and he was talking about
Michael Landon. He was,
He had pancreatic or was it liver cancer or something?
And my kids have to hear about this, and then Johnny kind of settled him down or something. I think I remember seeing that one.
But they were goofing around the whole time.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking of another one. I'm sorry.
No. He was talking about that though.
Yeah.
And there are all these things in the tabloids and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he got real serious and intense about it, and Johnny just kind of soothed his feathers, or so to speak.
Left his feathers a little bit.
Yeah.
And then he had Judy Garland on in '68.
Wow. Okay.
There's video
right near the end, yeah.
Right near the end, and I mean, Mike and Cam, I'm not kidding you guys. She was in bad fuck. I mean, she looks like a little girl.
I've heard those stories. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I've seen the pictures of her from like early '69 before she died, and it's like she's rail thin. It was just
like she reverted back to Dorothy or something. Yeah.
Yeah, like she was reverting back to Dorothy, but she looked skeletal. And in this one, she had she had this white like jumpsuit on, right? And she had the short hair, and she kind of looked. It was the '60s version of Judy. And and I kind of looked and I went, oh my God. She's like practically like she's not mumbling, but she's like talking to Johnny, and Johnny's like, so some performers they give it away. I don't give it away. She's like Keith makeup on. I mean that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
But
so not quite reverting back to Dorothy then. No, just in bad shape. In bad shape.
She's Mrs. Norman Maine after the bender. But I mean, there's so much
It's a lot of great history to process and revisit.
Yeah. There's one thing I've always been kind of like not pissed, but kind of like disappointed is that he never got to interview the Beatles.
They were on his show, but Joe Garagiola was guest host. Yeah. And if you watch the Beatles documentary, I think it was Joe DiMaggio was the host. They don't know from Americans over there, sometimes.
Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah. And they were promoting Apple Records. Yeah, and it wasn't very good.
Lula Bankhead.
She was on there too that same night?
And she, the story goes like McMahon's on the couch. There's John and Paul. They come walking out. And they're kind of like, what? John goes, where's Johnny?
Oh, boy.
Because they knew about him. And, Garagiola's going like, what are you guys? And he's just asked. And then Tallulah Bankhead's just like punching in with these questions. And they're kind of, lady, what the fuck are you talking about? She's like, well, what do you think? What do you think of this? What do you think of that? She's smoking her 15 cigarettes in 1 hour, and it was just like, they were just like looking, going like, yeah, we just came here.
Where are we?
Yeah.
Right.
We just,
is that clip on YouTube? There's so many great clips on YouTube.
There's a clip of it somewhere on YouTube.
I applaud NBC and company for really.
Speaking of clips, I've got a true story. This is my parents.
Sure.
Joe Garagiola used to be on the Today Show, right?
Yeah.
Apparently, he was doing I need a paperclip. He's joking around. There was a whole routine. I need a paperclip for this. Blah, blah, blah. Well, my parents sent him a paperclip, and they got a thank you note. They got a thank you note back from him.
Wow.
Yeah, it's in that. Yeah, I remember hearing about that. They just, when you said his name, or we brought his name up, remember? Then you said clip. So anyway,
clip it.
I just went on my middle initial is T. I go up on tangents sometimes, but it is reminding me of that.
Well, the one that I love is the night there's two nights. There's the night the Monkees were on. It was Mickey, Peter, and Davey. But
Johnny was there that night?
He was there that night.
Okay.
And they played, I think, because they went on the Joey Bishop show afterwards. They came on, and Mickey basically took the interview over. Because Mike made a joke saying, we went up to the NBC commissary and got a ptomaine sandwich. But then I don't think they performed, or they might have performed that night. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But then
I'll look that up for sure.
Joey Bishop was hosting, and Monty Python came on.
Oh, wow.
I think it was Michael Palin and Terry Jones came on, and Joey Bishop comes on, and he says, well, these two fellas here from a group that's starting to make it big here, a comedy group called Monty Python's Flying Circus, and I'm told funny. And I read that, and I was like, whoa, boy. And they show.
Oh, you said I'm told they're funny?
I'm told they're funny.
Yeah. Wow.
And then they showed this clip of Michael Palin in drag. It was it was from the 4th season. I know it's the 4th season. He's on a ship. They're doing the whole, it's one of the 4th season clips, and the audience was just giggling and chortling a little bit, ha ha ha, like that. And they came out, and it was just it's completely lost on you guys what we do.
Right.
Then, the Holy Grail would come out, and everybody would be like, wow, these guys are great,
Call their bluff. Oh.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Carson did, basically. He called everyone's bluff.
He also had this thing. You guys know that some comedians would be on his show, and if you got called to the couch,
yeah,
you're going to get a bunch of bookings and telephone calls later. Yeah.
Freddie Prinze came on. It was the first night he appeared on the show, and he got Chico and the Man, and they called him up. I said, hey, we got the series for you. Boom. Because he got Johnny loved him because he was funny as hell. Brenner, the same way. There were some guys on there, he would give the that's wild, wacky stuff. Stephen Wright, same way. Drew Carey, same. Dennis Wolfberg, I don't think he got called over. Dennis, if anybody remembers Dennis Wolfberg, he was the guy with the bulging eyes.
Yes.
There were some guys, they would make their debut and then that was it. You didn't hear from him again.
I don't know who Dennis Wolfberg is because he never got called over. So
No. It'd be like he would go wild, wacky stuff. That's clever. Stephen Wright came on one night and he did this whole thing. And Stephen Wright gives that like deadpan monologue.
Right. I used to play him when I DJ'd a lot. I played comedy a lot. Yeah.
Nice.
John laughing hysterically.
I Have a Pony album is good. It's great.
Yeah. I love the one where he says, when he does that line where he says, one night I came in, all my furniture was stolen, replaced with the same exact replica of my furniture.
Yeah. One of my favorites, we just moved in a new house a year or so ago, and what does this switch do? He has this bit about, I got a new house and there's a switch on the wall. I just flipped, nothing happened. About a week later, I got a call from a woman from Switzerland saying, "Cut it out."
Yeah.
Who can to come up with that?
Yeah, that didn't happen overnight.
But there was some had on that were like on once, and then that was it. I don't remember, like, there's some comedians I was trying to look up. I was like, I remember him being on the Tonight Show, but I don't remember him being on after that.
Did Andy Kaufman play the Tonight Show?
I don't think he did. I think
he might have been one that he said no way. Yeah,
would have been intimidated probably.
He did.
He did
the Elvis. He did the Elvis thing.
Oh, yeah. He was on there. Okay.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, because he did.
Oh, okay. I saw him when I believe Letterman or Steve Martin. I think Steve Martin was guest hosting when he. One time I saw him on there. And there was a lot of guest hosts over the years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially in the later years.
He would take 2 or 3 off or do something like he'd have like Steve Martin come in or I kind of remember like there was some when they made Thick of the Night, right? They were hyping that show to be, hey, it's gonna get syndicated, boom, because it's right after Merv Griffin goes off, right?
Yeah.
And they put Alan Thicke on as this guy who's going to replace Carson, and he's gonna wow you, and it lasted for like I think a year. Thick of the Night, not even. They had Johnny. What was the other one? Ross Schaefer had a show on.
Wow.
The one who started to give Johnny a run for his money was Arsenio.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Arsenio was fairly successful on Fox. Yeah, was he on Fox or Paramount?
Yeah, and Arsenio tapped into a crowd that hadn't been tapped into, and that was the black urban market.
Yep. Well, he had Clinton on there playing sax.
Oh, yes. Wow.
Yeah.
But I think that was after Carson retired. But I don't remember. I don't remember like. I remember Carson having Reagan on one time. And how do we? He just asked Reagan to sing, and Reagan gave this really. I wasn't a big fan of Ronald Reagan when I was growing up, but the guy had some good valid points about if we can do without certain things, we wouldn't be in debt. He brought that up, and I said, okay, that makes sense. Till he got to the White House, and it was like screw everybody who's not like me,
Yeah.
But I think the thing that gets me the most is he would have the guest list he had on, the actresses he had on. I remember he had on who was it? Jane Fonda on one time.
Oh, the infamous cat story.
A cat story, and
he knew how to get everyone riled up and kind of somehow they felt comfortable just sharing their outrageous stories with him.
Yeah.
And somebody said, the girl said, would you like to take a look at my pussy? And he said, well, you get that damn cat off your lap and we'll talk. I think that was the line. I don't remember.
Yeah, if you move the cat or something like that. But then But she also came on there, and I think that was an urban legend because she brought it up to him, and he says, "I think I would have remembered that." Yeah. So I don't know if he ever actually happened.
That's wild.
I do remember another thing about Carson's monologue, and I had a lot of people say it was the funniest when they were screwing up.
Yeah.
When it was the joke wouldn't take, and
no shortage of
the reaction and his interplay with Ed, it was classic. Because he would make a joke about the fact that the joke wasn't working.
He said, I'm gonna. He turns to. I was watching one last night. He's doing the monologue. He's like, "You've seen me get out of this before. Don't worry, I'll get out of this one again." When he did Karnak the Great, or the Magnificent Karnak, there's one thing he does, and you might have seen this, Mike, or you remember.
Yeah.
He had Pat McCormick as a head writer. If you know who Pat McCormick is, he played Big Enos in Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tall guy, red handlebar mustache. So he's doing Karnak the Great. He's reading off the signs. He says, "Sis boom ba," and Matt McGregor goes, "Sis boom ba, sis boom ba." He opens this. Says, "What's the sound your sheep makes when it explodes?" And the crowd laughed. I remember watching it that night, and my mother and my father were laughing hysterically.
And ooh, too much info.
My grandmother, God bless her, 75 years old. She was a stroke victim. She was staying with us at the time, and she couldn't talk. And my mom said, "Hey, Mom, tonight's the last night Johnny Carson's going to be on. Do you want to watch it?" So my grandmother, who couldn't speak, yeah. Okay, all right. So my mom turns on the Tonight Show, and my grandmother's watching it, and she hears my grandmother had a bell, and my mom walked in, and I think she said, "Mom, you have to go to the bathroom." My grandmother was crying. She was pointing at the TV, and I watched it that room. But my mom told me the story later. Said, "Your grandmother was crying. She knew Johnny Carson was off the air now."
Wow.
Wow.
And I was like, that's what happened when Telly Savalas died. I got a picture of my grandma with Telly Savalas, and my mom said, "Telly Savalas died, Mom." My grandmother went, "Oh, yeah," like
Great
that,
actor.
Great actor, yeah. But she was upset Carson was off the air because she would watch Carson every
These
night.
Beloved icons who are so surreal, and then when they leave us, it's like, that's lightning in a bottle. You can't.
My grandmother would wake me up at like 11:30. I'd be in bed. She's like, "You want to watch Carson with me?" "Yeah, sure. Okay, Grandma." So
I think what you guys have both perfectly illustrated is this kind of brought up the whole get your TV dinners in order, and we're watching a variety show tonight, but it's not like anything you've ever seen, and somehow is able to just bring out the best in society and laughter.
I do remember there was an article some entertainment magazine, whatever. Can't remember the magazine, but the whole article was about a woman who just totally flabbergasted at a party. I've never watched Carson.
Wow.
So you're the one. It's one of those things. So yeah.
And I remember like reading about who they, when we talk about who they threw out at that time, you had, you said Merv Griffin, and that was daytime, but he had a nighttime show. Jerry Lewis had a talk show that flopped. There was a guy named Les Bank or Les Crane. Les Crane. He
was kind of antagonistical, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
And from what I understand, it was like he was just really like ABC had him on, and they kind of pulled him off.
Yeah.
Cavett stayed a while. Cavett stayed a long time. They would put any I just remember anybody to throw out to try to beat Johnny Carson.
It was a 30-year reign. Yeah, 62 to 92.
30-year reign, he swatted them all away,
Yeah.
But it was because of his charm, his personality, the way he ran a talk show, the way things were with him and Ed and Doc and the stage manager Frank DeCordova on the side, was it Frank DeCordova or Fred DeCordova? I don't remember.
Fred DeCordova, yeah,
because Frank DeCordova is the guy who was an F Troop.
The Mighty Carson Art Players, yeah.
There we go.
Carol Wayne, and unfortunately when she died, Teresa Ganzel came in, and she wasn't just a pretty face with nice boobs. She could keep up with Johnny.
Yeah, he had his competitors.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, Carol Wayne came on and she was really good, and then she passed away, and then they brought in Teresa Ganzel, who was great, and could do things, she was in a lot of TV shows when we were growing up. I remember her being on the Duck Factory when I was a kid.
Nice.
I guess we're going to start wrapping it up soon, but I do remember this is a bizarre bit. Speaking of the Mighty Carson Art Players, he was doing something about the post office. He's doing one of his routines as a character, and all of a sudden he had like a postage stamp, and all of a sudden this guy's head pops up into the desk and started licking the stamp, and then went away. It's like, I swear I saw that happen. It sounds like a fever dream, but I saw that on the Carson show.
My favorite was the clackers with Jack Webb.
Yeah.
These copper clappers.
I'll clobber them. Yeah.
I'll clobber them. And then there was one with him and Betty White, and they were at a restaurant in Malibu, and at that time there were like these rains. So they keep trying to order food, and there's like water being doused on them every 5 minutes. Is the seafood fresh? Yeah, it just came in, and somebody just throws it on the, a fish gets thrown on the plate,
Jay Silverheels as Tonto from Toronto for a job application. And,
oh my God.
Yeah.
Just wordplay. That's kind of his forte.
We mentioned prior the infamous Lenny Bruce. The famous Lenny Bruce, George McCready.
The child was played by George McCready. Yeah,
I loved when he had Carlin on, and Carlin was doing Al Sleet, the hippy dippy weatherman.
Yeah,
and he goes, "There's a cold front coming out of the west, and then there's that's not there's a Canadian low coming down, which is nothing compared to a Mexican high."
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this has been dandy, guys. Thank you so much for suggesting this topic, JJ. It gave me an excuse to just watch nonstop comedy all day.
I'm gonna probably be watching Carson tonight as I'm laying in bed.
Yeah, you can search around for. I think there's a channel that runs old Carsons.
Yeah, Get TV, the Sony channel will air some clips and everything, and the roasts you guys mentioned will sometimes air on other antenna channels. It is that kind of comedy, like. Everybody wants it, and everybody can find it just about it wherever they can get their hands on it.
Yeah. So,
and if there's not video, there's audio.
Yeah,
that audio will be just as amusing.
That 2 records set are a lot of stuff that never aired again.
Comedy that just can't be broken. So
right. All right,
speed deal.
It's been great.
Right. Take care,
roof off of this. This was a hoot.
Play the Tonight Show theme to close it out. You can get the
yes, I will do that.
Okay.
Theme. Who wrote the Tonight Show theme?
Paul Anka.
50%. Well, he collected half the residuals just because he claimed he co-wrote it. Pulled a Roddenberry.
I wonder if Paul Anka yelled at the band when they were recording that.
You guys gotta wear shirts.
You bastards.
Deep cut. Anyway.
All right, guys. Mike,
anytime, my dude.
It's been fun. Talk to you.
Take
Promise.
care.
That was so much fun. Thank you.
All right.
us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up